This time last year I went on a hitchhiking adventure and I gave myself a couple of rules. I had one sign which said north on it. I had to accept every lift to see how far I got in 48 hours. And I got pretty far. You'll see at the end of the video where my final destination was. So yeah, I set up from Knutsford services again, like I did with my hitchhiking documentary, and I got picked up by these two guys who were solar panel installers, and we ended up going up towards Leeds instead of up the M6, which I thought we were going to head up north that way. And I helped them pick up a delivery. They dropped me off at a service station near Huddersfield, and I waited for a little while there after having some lunch, and then this guy picked me up, who was really kind, but unfortunately he dropped me further south than when we started. We got stuck in some roadworks and a diversion and stuff. It wasn't his fault, it was just a bit confusing. But then I was stuck outside this pub on this little village, watching the same van go past over and over again. I almost gave up and walked to the next junction, but this guy picked me up, super helpful. He drove me all the way up through Yorkshire to drop me off in County Durham at a nice service station. And then another guy picked me up and he just took me a few miles up the road to Washington Services, I think it's Washington Services. It's near Gateshead. And then unfortunately a guy there tried to fill up his car from these petrol pumps which weren't plumbed in, they were just on pallets, and I said something to him and he got annoyed because he thought I was being like cheeky. And then he realised that it was his mistake, and I was like, oh no, I know what's going to happen. And when he came out from paying his fuel, he said, come on, I'll give you a lift. And he gave me a lift literally like 2.5 miles up the road and dropped me off at the Angel of the North. And I was like, that's not what I wanted at all. And then I was stuck for ages. Well, I couldn't get a lift because it was so dangerous with all the roadworks. So I walked all the way down to the next junction and got there just as they were literally putting out the sign saying it was closed. These machines are cool.
Oh shit.
So I was like, okay, next junction, and I walked a bit and then got the bus down to the next junction, and by this time it was far too late and I just wanted to get out north of Newcastle, but no one was picking me up there. Some lads were shouting at me from cars, so that's where my first day ended. I only got to Gateshead, I only got to Newcastle from Manchester, so it was not looking good. Anyway, after a night's sleep in a cheap hotel, this weird thing happened. I went back to the service station, and before I held up a sign, before I was even able to do a bit to camera and explain what was going to happen, this guy picked me up in his motorhome and just drove me for miles and miles, and it was such a fun trip with him. Unfortunately, we weren't going that fast, and we were going the very long way around up through the Scottish borders and then into Scotland. And then he was wanting to go to this town where there was a shop that he wanted to go to for supplies, and we ended up getting in there. And look at this! There was this like massive like festival town day on where they were crowning the Queen.
It's very quiet.
Yeah.
And it was a huge big production, thousands of people, thousands of costumes, and you know, a big deal for this town, and we just ran into it by accident. And then back into the motorhome and all the way up through some more towns which the roads were closed for their own town days, and he dropped me near Glasgow at the service station.
Best ever lift.
Only a few minutes wait here, and then a couple picked me up who were driving to the Isle of Skye, and I was definitely wanting to lift with them. And we just drove up through the mountains, through Pitlochry, up round to Badenoch, I think the place was where the service is. I was just in the car for hours, and we were listening to music on Spotify and like swapping tracks and things. It was like a really happy time. So those were two of my best ever lifts in the UK, just back to back. And then I was in this, they dropped me in this little village between Inverness and Fort William, so they could head off to the Isle of Skye. And then this lovely lady picked me up right after I'd just been telling the other guys, no, if you're a female alone in the car, you should never pick up a random guy on the side of the road. And that's exactly what happened. And she drove me all the way up Loch Ness and all the way up to Inverness. She was lovely company. She really needed someone to talk to, which was nice. And then I was literally waiting maybe 2 minutes, and this other couple picked me up, dropped me a little bit further up I'm losing track of where I am now. Oh yeah, and then by the time they dropped me at a lay-by, and by the time I walked from where they were in the lay-by to the start of the lay-by to hitchhike, somebody else picked me up there and offered me a lift and took me a few towns up. He actually offered me to stay at his holiday, Airbnb holiday cottage for the night, and I almost accepted, but I was like, no, I can get a few more lifts. So I grabbed some lunch, some dinner, and then somebody picked me up, and again, this was the worst kind of lift. Oh, I'll just take you 2 minutes up the road, to the next town. I was like, yeah, because I had to accept every lift. And he dropped me at this junction, and the cars were going past at 60 miles an hour, and nobody was driving in and out of the little junction here into the village. And so I walked down the road a bit to get to a lay-by, but again, the traffic was just coming through so fast. I was like, this is just not safe. And I hung around, had a cider for a bit, hung around for another hour or so, and then went and found a place to sleep in the woods. So that was day 2, a lot better than day 1. But again, people were too generous with the lifts, and I had to say yes, and I was dropped off in the middle of nowhere where I couldn't get a lift. So in the morning I got up and then started walking to the next village, which was only a few miles away, but I just needed to get somewhere for breakfast and things. But somebody picked me up, dropped me off in the village before all the before all the shops were open. So I didn't get any breakfast there, and then just walked out of the village and started going up the road. Somebody picked me up, dropped me off, and then I was like, I definitely need some breakfast, so I need to be dropped off at the next place. And then a guy picked me up again, and a new guy, and Polish guy, works in the oil industry up there, and just drove incredibly fast all the way up and dropped me in Wick, which was a really good lift. And then just went out of Wick, walked up the road, found a good place to hitch and waited around. This was quite a long wait, and I was running out of time. I was only an hour and a half left of my 48 hours, and then a couple of women picked me up who were off to do some open water swimming. They sorted their car out so I could get in, and they were a bunch of fun as well. And they were like, well, we can drop you a bit further north, or we can drop you at John O'Groats. Where do you want to go? And I was like, kind of makes sense, John O'Groats. It's not the furthest point north, but it's traditionally, spiritually, the northernmost point of Great Britain. So there you go. So that's it, 10:25, and I've run out of road. I mean, I don't think this sign is going to get me any further north. I've had such a good time. The past 2 days have been a blast. Thank you to everybody who's picked me up. And that's how my hitchhiking adventure ended last year. I hitchhiked for 48 hours with one sign and accepted every lift. Now this year I'm going to be hitchhiking to the westernmost point of Great Britain, which is over 360 miles, and I'm going to try and do it in one day on the summer solstice to get to that point by sunset. I'm not going to be accepting every lift. I'm going to be strategically accepting and turning down lifts to see how quickly I can get there. So follow along on Instagram if you want to see that. The link to my Instagram is in the description. And I'll see you on the next adventure. Bye.